on this issue of inflation, what's your expectations here? We all know that the government inflation number terribly understates the true rate of inflation. And I think, they're losing a lot of credibility for that reason with the population at large. What's your own expectation here for inflationary pressures going forward?
I think, we're in trouble. I mean, there's no way out. I mean, the inflation is, again, as I just mentioned, is rampant already. And the response by our Fed is that they're going to keep interest rates right above zero and Treasury rates down and make it almost an artificial situation. So the money's going to flow into goods and real things, and it's feeding on itself. And with the dollar, as you're predicting, and I agree with totally, it could go into a free fall because people are saying, the dollar was the bastion of stability, which is part of the reason for the manipulation of the gold price by what I've always called this gold cartel. Yeah. But it's all falling apart. And it's like, it's the mirror thing. There's nothing behind the mirrors, Alice in Wonderland sort of thing, I mean, it's just, there's nothing there and nothing's being done about it. And what's going to have to happen is understanding that Americans just can't afford what we've been told we were entitled to all these decades. We're broke. And if we're just going to keep kidding ourselves and printing money, keeping interest rates down, and the bankers love it, the Wall Street loves it, the politicians love it, but as we get broker and broker and broker, we're probably looking at another flash crash, except that'll be real, out of nowhere. Things are just going to tank. At some point, a collapsing dollar and soaring inflation is not good for our markets, as is already the real estate market, with all that's been done, is a total disaster. And even now, the jobless claim, the employment situation in the United States, instead of showing signs of improving, is starting to tank again. This is after, all this quantitative easing and stimulative measures. The standard of living, I'm afraid, I hate to say this, is just going to fall apart in the U.S. And people, there's going to be riots. I mean, not maybe major ones, but people are going to be so upset about it because the average person doesn't have time to think about these things like you and I do. Yeah. And they got kids and they got a job and they got to do all this stuff and they go home and they listen to what someone else says, and all of a sudden, diapers go from $1 to $2 and things like this, and it's just feeding on itself. Yeah,
I agree, and it is sad if people aren't going to be prepared for what's coming. The best way, obviously, to prepare is owning gold and silver. But just sort of to summarize, it's always been my view that one of the reasons why the gold cartel exists is to maintain the illusion that the dollar is really worthy of being worthy of being the world's reserve currency, when in fact we all know that it's not, because of the way the dollar has been debased. And I always like to go back to something that John Brimlow discovered years ago in Paul Volcker's memoirs that were published in Japan, of all places. That one of the mistakes they made in the 1970s, they being the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department, was not to intervene in the gold market to keep the price of gold from rising, because it shook investor confidence. And he basically said, don't make that mistake again. And that seemed to be sort of the logic as to why when the dollar started getting overvalued and gold was undervalued, back in the 1990s, the intervention became got started, I should say. Do you believe that that's basically a premise for the existence of the gold cartel? Oh, totally. It's funny you bring that up, because it's one of the things I'm going to bring up tonight at our get-together. And it started with, again, these gold loans that Robert Rubin, the CEO of a major company, and everyone started to follow him. Then he became Treasury Secretary, and he was the one made famous always talking about the strong dollar, his strong dollar policy. Well, I went years, for the first years, and God was going around saying, well, okay, Robert Rubin's talking about his strong dollar policy. Okay, what is he doing to implement a policy? You have to have a policy, you've got to be doing something. I said, okay, would people tell me, raise your hands, what's the United States doing to affect the strong dollar policy? I never had one hand raised. I had to raise my hand. They're rigging the gold price. Yeah, instead of raising the interest rates like Paul Volcker did. That's right. And as we know where that came from, this is not just poppycock. Lawrence Summers, when he was at Harvard, he wrote a paper called Gibson's Paradox and the Gold Standard, was saying if you can control the gold price, you'll help control interest rates, that there was a direct relationship. And of course, who follows Robert Rubin into Treasury Secretary? Lawrence Summers, and he's been around with his behavioral finance operations behind even President Obama for years. So yes, it was the manipulation of the gold price was a big part of the strong dollar policy. They kept it going. The problem is now it's all falling apart because they don't have the gold.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to tonight's presentation. Just to summarize, can you tell everybody who's viewing these videos a little bit about how they can learn more about GATA and what they can do to help GATA and its efforts?
Well, you go to www.gata.org and you can sign up. My colleague Chris Powell does a lot of work sending out emails and does some great commentary. And I have a financial website, La Metropole Cafe, which people can sign up for a 2-week free trial. It's been going on for about 12 and a half years now, and it's worked out pretty well, and people can determine if that's of value to them. And it's going to be a lot of excitement, a lot of fun, and I think even most importantly, you get an awareness of what's really going on in the world. I mean, I'm not that smart a guy, but what I laugh at when I look at CNBC or all these smart people, and I call them the Muppets. I mean, they're just like, they're talking about stuff that just isn't real or honest, or it's just like in a different world. I call Planet Wall Street. But they don't understand, they won't talk about all the things you can get from our perspective, which whether people agree with or not, we have been right, at least about gold and silver, and dead on, and very few people have our track record because we understand these things. And if you just read the average media, you won't get it. So, taking a look, if you don't know anything about us, what we have to say, and I think you'll enjoy what you read.
Yeah, I very much like La Metropole Cafe. I read it every day. I don't know how you manage to do a commentary like that every day, but I've been reading it for years and years. Probably since we first started speaking after your appearance on CNBC, which I think is probably about the time you first got La Metropole Cafe up and running.
It was long after.
Yeah, well, Bill, it's been a real pleasure, and look forward to seeing you this evening.
Thank you, James.
Good, thanks.